The story opens with a man chained in the bowels of the amphitheater of Capua awaiting his turn to be executed. He then flashes back to his village in a place named Thrace where the villagers, including him, are discussing recent changes. There has been an appearance of a Roman soldier named Claudius Glaber who has come to ask for their help in battle against Mithridates. Despite Rome and Thrace's shaky relations in the past, the villagers agree to march with the Romans. In return for their help in the battle, the villagers want the Romans to aid them in fighting the local barbarians that plague their village. This treaty was sparked by the Thracian. Shortly afterwards, the man returns home and falls into the embrace of his wife, Sura. They speak of a happy, peaceful future together without the attacks from the barbarians. The next morning, Sura reveals that the gods spoke to her in her dreams, showing her husband kneeling before a red serpent. She asks him not to leave, saying that if he does, he will be led to great and unfortunate things. The man, however, decides to leave despite her warnings and ties a purple ribbon around her leg. This is a symbol so that she can keep his memory close to herself while he is away. Sura then tells her husband to kill them all, referring to their enemies, and he agrees to do so for her. Sometime later, the Thracian men march to battle against the advancing barbarians. The war quickly develops into a predictable formula. The Thracians always take the front lines and endure the brunt of the enemy's attacks, while the Romans arrive late, chasing off the stragglers. One evening, there is dissatisfaction in the Thracian camp which quickly evolves into talk of leaving due to the Romans' lack of commitment to their cause. The Thracian reminds them that they gave their word to help, and this sparks a fight with Drenes, a fellow soldier. The two are caught by the Romans and sent to scout for enemies as punishment. Elsewhere, Glaber returns to his tent to find his wife, Ilithyia, waiting for him. She sneaked into the camp, without her father's permission, to bring her husband a gift of wine and companionship in bed. She mentions that her father, Senator Albinius, will be displeased if Glaber returns unfruitful in battle. The next morning, the Thracians discover that their enemies, the Geti, are launching a flank attack around the Roman encampment to assault the Thracian villages directly. Glaber only adds to their dismay and announces his intent to march east towards Mithridates. He will not sacrifice his troops whilst the villages in the west are still under threat from the barbarians. This also means that he is breaking the treaty that was done not so long ago. Desperate to win his own battles, Glaber orders them into formation, but the Thracians refuse. Glaber attempts to force them to his will, but the Thracians resist, and Glaber is thrown from his horse and knocked unconscious whilst his following soldiers are slaughtered. The Thracians then rush towards their home villages to save their families and land. Back near a village, Sura is picking fruit when a group of barbarians close in on her. She manages to fight one off her with a rock to the head and defend herself with his sword before the remainder closes in on her. Her husband comes to the rescue, and together they fight off the rest of them. After a moment's reunion, the two see their village in the distance, the buildings burning and screams resounding from it. There is nothing they can do now and decide to flee into the wilderness. A few hours later, the husband and wife set up camp for the night and discuss what to do next. The man regrets ever leaving, and Sura is visibly shaken by the fate of their village. Nonetheless, they decide to flee south together, away from the bloodshed. The next morning, they awake, finding Claudius Glaber standing over them. The Thracian reaches for his sword, but soldiers quickly overpower him, grab Sura and whisk her away, screaming. The soldiers beat him, on Glaber's order, who blames the man for his lack of good fortune. Turns out, half of Glaber's army has been slaughtered, and he has been recalled to Rome in disgrace. Glaber informs the Thracian that Sura is destined for slavery for his actions before knocking him out. The man is being sent via ship to a place called Capua with the other captured Thracians, including Drenes and Bizo. The scene shifts to Glaber, once again in Capua with Ilithyia, discussing the forthcoming games and a way to reclaim standing with her father, the Senator Albinius, in a presentation of the gladiators that are to perform in the games, in which trainers Batiatus and Salonius both present their best. Glaber brings forth the Thracian prisoners and announces that they are to be executed in the arena. He hopes that the entertainment their deaths will provide might make up for him returning to Rome without a victory. The Thracian is next seen in the arena, watching Drenes battle against another gladiator named Arcadios. Though Drenes puts up a spirited fight, he is eventually slain by Arcadios, leaving the remaining Thracian prisoner to be executed. He is then handed a gladius and forced onto the floor of the arena to face the formidable champion. To his shock, 3 more gladiators from the house of Salonius enter the arena prepared to help execute him. The crowd is against the uneven odds, but the fight commences nevertheless. The gladiators initially have the advantage over the Thracian, and he suffers multiple wounds. As he lies on the sands, he sees a red serpent on Arcadios' shield and is reminded of Sura's dream. He remembers her words, "Kill them all." This spurs him to attack, and he immediately kills Arcadios, finishing off the others one by one. Having won the crowd's support with his surprising victory, the gathered people chant for him to live. Glaber cannot allow him to do so out of his own pride and wishes him dead. But the disgraced general also craves the acceptance of Albinius, who must honor the crowd's wishes. The clever gladiator trainer Batiatus offers a solution, and buys the Thracian for his ludus, not expecting him to survive the training. Later, Albinius asks Glaber what the man's name is, so he can announce their decision to the crowd. But the latter never cared to ask it. Batiatus observes that the way he fights reminds him of the Thracian king of old. He adds that the old king was called Spartacus. Albinius quickly announces the Thracian to the crowd, granting him life and naming him Spartacus. The crowd of the arena immediately starts chanting Spartacus's new name. As he stares covered in blood looking at Glaber, Spartacus lies in Batiatus' ludus recovering from his fight, and he dreams of being reunited with his wife, Sura. The dream ends violently with Sura's head erupting into a fountain of blood, and Spartacus awakes to find himself chained to a table. Batiatus then orders Spartacus's long hair to be shaved off. Inside the villa above, the gladiator trainer's wife, Lucretia, ponders over the pool in the center, which has remained dry due to the drought and lack of money. She complains that buying Spartacus drained their funds, but her husband informs her that Glaber will be visiting soon and that their fortune is improving, with the thought of Glaber as patron to the ludus. Downstairs, the gladiators bathe in what water is left, and Spartacus is thrown in to join them. Former champion of Capua, Crixus, and one of the top fighters in this ludus, Barca taunt him, telling him of the proud life of a gladiator. The next day, Spartacus and the other new recruits, including Marcus, Varro, Curza, and an unnamed trainee, are led out into the training area by chief trainer Onomaus, who is referred to as Doctor, in front of the gladiators. Onomaus delivers a speech, telling them of the ludus being sacred ground. Batiatus comes out onto the balcony to observe and motivate the trainees. Onomaus then approaches Spartacus and talks of his victory in the arena, but claims it was nothing, hollow and worthless, and that Spartacus would not have lasted against any of Batiatus' gladiators. Spartacus shows disagreement, and Onomaus orders a practice match against Crixus, who gladly obliges. Spartacus refuses to fight or heed Onomaus' orders and only grabs the sword once Onomaus' back is turned, ready to fight for his freedom. Crixus deflects this attack and beats him down easily. Eventually, Spartacus throws his sword at Crixus, but the sword is slashed away and slices open the throat of an unnamed trainee as Spartacus looks on in horror. Crixus uses this opportunity and forces him to the ground. Spartacus refuses to surrender, but Batiatus secures his life so he can last until Glaber's visit. Sometime later, the trainee gladiators begin their training. They practice wielding swords and shields and carry heavy beams around the yard to build their strength. In their lunch break, Varro joins Spartacus, and they talk of the other gladiators. Varro reveals that he is only there to pay off his debts for his wife, Aurelia, and son, Janus. A Roman merchant named Ovidius appears in the villa to inform Batiatus of his debt for 3 months of grain. The latter arranges for it to be paid off after the approaching arena games. He worries about state of his gladiators for the games, and tells Doctor to train them even harder. The trainees are taken from their sleeping cells and forced to carry logs through the night. At dawn they are allowed to eat, but Barca throws the rest of the food to the ground for amusement. Asher, seeing their hunger, approaches Spartacus with a loaf of bread and tells him of his services, suggesting that it would be in his favor for Spartacus to survive, as Crixus would lose a large sum of money. Before he can properly eat, Spartacus is dragged away by the guards to be held in a cell for Glaber's arrival. Glaber taunts him, showing him the purple ribbon that Spartacus tied around Sura's leg before he left their village. Desperate for her to be safe, Spartacus offers his life in exchange for hers, but Glaber points out that his life is no longer his to bargain with, as he is now a slave. As he leaves, Glaber drops the purple ribbon to the floor, telling Spartacus that he sold Sura to an unpleasant Syrian for half a coin. Meanwhile, up in the villa, Lucretia and Ilithea become acquainted over the meal Batiatus prepared for the visit. As they discover each other's more dubious natures, both are intrigued. Ilithea spies the gladiators from the balcony and is fascinated by them, having been denied such sights by her father. Her visit is cut short though, as Glaber prepares to leave and take Ilithea with him, but not before Ilithea can place a kiss on Lucretia's lips with a lascivious parting glance. Spartacus is returned to the training gladiators. He sees Glaber leaving the ludus and takes his anger out on Curza, almost killing him, only stopping with Onomaus' intervention. He loses the purple ribbon, which Onomaus notices and picks up and later gives to Batiatus, in the hope that it can tame Spartacus' will. Batiatus, deducing the origin and meaning of the ribbon, shows it to Spartacus. He convinces Spartacus to fight for him and serve him, on the promise that he will find and return Sura to him. Later that night, the gladiators gather for the test of the trainees. Varro battles Aeneas and, although he does not win, he is well matched and is accepted into the Brotherhood. Next, the trainee Marcus fights Barca and is quickly and mercilessly killed. Crixus is chosen to fight Spartacus. At first, Spartacus seems again unwilling, but the thought of Sura convinces him that he must act, and the fight begins. The two fight well, and a pause at the end allows Spartacus to push Crixus off the wooden stage. He moves in for the kill, but Batiatus orders him to stop. Spartacus gives in, acknowledging him as Dominus. The remaining gladiators, Spartacus, Varro, and Curza, recite the oath of the gladiators named Sacramentum Gladiatorum, and receive the mark of the Brotherhood, a B for Batiatus, burned onto the inside of their arms. Spartacus readies himself for training in the ludus, wrapping Sura's purple ribbon around his arm for safekeeping. Doctor watches him fighting Curza and mocks his style, and embarrasses him in front of the other gladiators, telling them all that they need to leave everything they learned before behind. The gladiators train hard, especially Spartacus, who has a goal to fight for. Doctor tells them that the Vulcanalia is approaching, and that Batiatus has chosen 20 of them to fight in it. The two strongest gladiators will fight as the Primus, and they are left wondering who will fight Crixus. Meanwhile, Batiatus outs his frustration regarding the magistrate Calavius, who says he will likely not attend the reception for the games in Batiatus' villa to instead dine with Salonius. Lucretia assures him that the other guests will suffice, and that she may be able to raise the subject of patronage with Eleutheia. Later, Lucretia has a merchant of jewelry as a guest in the house. Nevia, watched by Crixus as he trains, tries on each piece as Lucretia looks for something of note, or something that would impress Eleutheia. She haggles for an expensive emerald green and gold necklace. Doctor puts the gladiators through drills. Spartacus notices that the purple ribbon is coming loose, and stops to tighten it. This angers Doctor, who urinates in front of Spartacus and then pushes him into it as punishment. Crixus is removed from training to satisfy Lucretia's lust, and uses the walk into the villa as an opportunity to flirt with her personal slave, Nevia, albeit unsuccessfully. During training, Doctor teaches the gladiators that not all fights end in death, and that lifting a hand with 2 fingers signifies surrender. Doctor catches Varro and Spartacus mocking the lesson, and sends them both to the hole, a well of muck and waste, as punishment. Although at first angry to have been punished alongside Spartacus, Varro learns that Spartacus fights to free his wife, and reveals that he fights to pay off his debts and return to his wife, Aurelia. Later on, the two are in the baths with the other gladiators washing themselves off, and Doctor tells them that Crixus and Aeneas will fight each other in the Vulcanalia Primus. Spartacus and Varro are to fight each other, much to Spartacus' dismay, who wishes to fight Crixus. The next day, he speaks to Aeneas and taunts him until he attacks, moving out of the way at the last moment so that Aeneas crashes into a wooden post and injures himself. Doctor does not punish Spartacus, although he and the other gladiators suspect that Spartacus is defiantly up to something. The reception for the Vulcanalia takes place that evening, and the gladiators are brought forth for public viewing. Amongst the gladiators, Spartacus is the favorite and is admired by many of the visitors. Lucretia escorts Eleutheia, who notices the emerald necklace and remarks that it is beautiful, but out of fashion, thwarting Lucretia's attempts to impress her. When Eleutheia bores of the company, Lucretia hastily arranges for Varro to have sex with one of the slaves to keep the guests entertained. On his return, Varro overhears Batiatus organizing for Rabanus to face Crixus in the Primus, and Spartacus decides he must take action. He attacks Crixus, spurring Batiatus to take advantage of the public interest and drama and set the two against each other in the arena. In the evening, Nevia is sent down to the gladiators' area to fetch wine for the household, and there she meets Crixus, who gives her a necklace he acquired through Asher in an attempt to express his feelings for her. Meanwhile, the other gladiators prepare the approaching Vulcanalia, and Curza tells them of Theocol's The Shadow of Death. Spartacus believes that the stories, like those about Crixus, are fake and that he will win the fight the next day. The Vulcanalia arrives and Varro has success in his first fight in the arena. Calavius announces the Primus, and Spartacus enters the arena to chants and cheers. Crixus receives an even greater ovation, and is admired by Lucretia, Eleutheia, and Nevia from the stands. Before Batiatus can announce the official beginning of the battle, Spartacus attacks. The fight is unevenly matched to begin with, Spartacus attacking fiercely and Crixus defending. When Spartacus has exhausted himself from attack after attack, Crixus trips him and pushes him to the ground. Turning to the crowd to shout, "Capua, shall I begin?" He begins an impenetrable attack, showing himself to be a skilled gladiator beyond Spartacus' expectations. Spartacus is beaten many times until, exhausted and wounded, Crixus downs him. The crowd chants, "Kill, kill," and Crixus moves to place his sword at Spartacus' neck, waiting for Batiatus' signal. Spartacus sees the purple ribbon on his arm and realizes he has no other option but to surrender if he is to see Sura again. He raises the 2 fingers, even though this means he is disgraced as a gladiator. Batiatus allows Spartacus to live, against the wishes of both the crowd and Clavius. Afterwards, a wounded Spartacus removes his armor. He tells Doctor that he will train harder, but learns that it is of no use now. The crowd no longer favors him, and he is to be sent to the pit. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.